We are about to begin our session titled as A Celebration of Literature and Art Festivals. The session would be moderated by Mr. Asif Farrukhi, and he will introduce the speakers as we go along. I would like to introduce our moderator, a founding member of the Karachi Literature Festival, Mr. Asif Farrukhi. He's an author, critic, and a translator. And during the session course, we would request you to switch off your mobile phones and or keep them on silent. The format of the session would be a 40 to 45 minute discussion. The last 15 minutes would be reserved for question and answers. Please keep your questions short and concise and refrain from making any statements. Thank you.
Thank you. I almost heard this to sound like, please keep the discussion short and simple. But maybe that's not what it was said. Welcome to the session on the celebration of literary festivals. And I will like to introduce my panelists, at least those of them who are here. I'll start with Ulrich Schreiber. He is the director of International Literature Festival in Berlin. He studied philosophy, politics, and Russian at the Free University of Berlin. In 2001, he founded the International Literature Festival and has continued to be its director to the present day. He is the initiator of Worldwide Reading Series, which organizes reading in many countries, and he's also one of the founders of the PEN World Voices Festival. Next, I'll move on to Sadaf, you are next here. Sadaf Saaz comes from Bangladesh. She's a poet, writer, and activist. She currently lives in Dhaka, where she's involved in various endeavors, which include her travel and arts management company, Jatrik. She's also festival director and co-founder of the Hay Festival, Dhaka. Her debut poetry collection, Sari Reams, was published in November 2013, and the Dhaka Festival was just completed a couple of months back, not even a couple of months. So I'm going to ask you to talk about that in more detail, right? Razi Ahmed is supposed to join us from the Lahore Literature Festival, but he's not here. I'm hoping that he might join us. He's not well. Oh, I'm so sorry. All right, okay. Karthika VK, you also have to explain what the VK is all about. Karthika VK is a publisher and chief editor of HarperCollins Publishers India. She started her career in publishing at Penguin Books India in 1996 and moved to Harper in 2006 to its publishing program, and she has published a number of distinguished authors. Jude Kelly is the artistic director of the South Bank Centre in London, which is described as Britain's largest cultural institution, and she's been there since 2006. She had founded the Solent People's Theatre and the Battersea Arts Centre and was the founding director of the West Yorkshire Playhouse. A number of things, and I'm going to skip some of that because I'm hoping that rather than me reading it, you will be talking about this. Last but not the least, our host today, Ameena Saiyid. She's the managing director of the Oxford University Press Pakistan. She's the co-founder of the Karachi and the Islamabad Literature Festivals, co-director and co-founder of both the Children's and the Teachers Literature Festival. Also, Ameena, who's an OBE, she's the first woman to be appointed head of a multinational in Pakistan, the first woman to be elected president of the Overseas Investors Chamber of Commerce. I mean, a number of other things which I think I'm going to skip and ask you to explain. I'm going to keep the questions to be minimal, but I would really like to ask, to begin by talking about some of the festivals that I have just mentioned, what's happening in London, what's happening in Islamabad and Karachi, Dhaka, Berlin. So what is the sense of these festivals coming along? Why are they so interesting, important, and yet are they really different? Maybe I should begin with Dhaka, because you were about to say something, right?
Thank you very much for having me here, and it's extremely exciting to be Karachi Literature Festival for the first time. And I think being here underscores the reason why we started Hay Festival Dhaka 2011. 2015 will be our 5th year. We started in a very small way, a one-day festival, 800 people came. And I want to pick up with something that Jude had said in her talk in the previous session. What were these festivals for? Initially, we didn't know, and the first festival was catering to, I guess, the literati, the literature crowd, and 800 people came. But the reason why we started it was to give a platform to all types of literature and a voice to young Bangladeshi and actually Bangladeshi writers. Because we felt that Bangladesh was cut off from the rest of the world. And we wanted that platform where we could showcase our writers not only nationally but internationally, both Bangla and in English. And at the same time, we had the question as well that we had it free for all. And the idea was we wanted to reach beyond a small section of the society, which was sort of is this section of the society only going to be interested in literature, or can we have a much wider canvas? And what we found is that language deeply matters to us as a nation, and I think the idea is to make it egalitarian. We have it; it's a free-for-all festival, but at the same time, we want to make it relevant and have all kinds of expression of literature, but also keep the panels very tightly curated and keep the high standards as well and not drop it there. And we've actually found, this last year, I think we reached the tipping point where, Dhaka knew that Hay Festival was happening, even somebody who probably never picked up a book or thought that, oh, well, I don't know English, but I'll still go because, I'm interested in books and storytelling. They also came. But we managed, I think, not to sort of lower the lowest common denominator. We managed to keep, I think, the standard quite high. And so I really think that this is a space for important discussions and dialogues, and we're really happy with the way it's going.
Thank you, Sadaf. Now, what you say about Dhaka, it's so similar to what has happened in Karachi, that people know that this is going to happen and people have a sense that this is an interesting event, and language and books are very important. So I can understand what's happening in Dhaka and maybe in Karachi, but I wonder how that experience relates to Berlin, which is a kind of a more cosmopolitan city with plenty of things happening, and I suppose people read more books than they do in Dhaka and Karachi. Do they really read books? Are they really interested in festivals? What brings people to those kind of programs?
What brings people to these festivals in Berlin? I think, first, of course, the people read books. I don't know if they read less than 10 years ago or 20 years ago, since other things were coming up. But no, I think that people want to know more about the books and about the authors. Since you have in Berlin, especially, it's the most international of all the international literary festivals. 80% of the authors come from other countries. You can twice do a journey around the world, and you can imagine what's going on in the literary world, and you can learn something from other countries, other cultures, other literatures, and the thing is, a festival is in a time, let's say 5 days or 10 days, and this is focus for a lot of people. And the teacher, in the beginning of when we start the festival, we had no contact to the schools. But after 2-3 years, we got a very good connection to the schools and teachers and so school boys and girls. And a lot of children came to our festival. They like it. They love it to listen authors and to speak with authors. So more than 10,000 children come to this program. Very important. And the third thing in Berlin is we have. There are a lot of political discussions in the town, but we have discussions on human rights and other questions with authors, and this is also interesting for people to listen, to attend.
So it's also a very young and politically conscious audience which is coming to the program.
Yeah, between 6 and 80, yeah. 6 years, the children.
6 years.
From
Okay.
6 years on until 70, 80.
All right. Let me turn to Jude and ask about the scene in London and and the programs that you have been involved in, which I believe are not simply literary but also artistic, with including other disciplines. So, what is the kind of response like? What makes these programs work? What kind of people are drawn to these programs?
Well, first of all, we have a we started the London Literary Festival. That was 7 years ago now, as a space for ideas. But for those of you who heard me speak in the previous session, when I was talking about the origins of the South Bank Centre, which was the Festival of Britain, I think the thing that a festival does, it celebrates humanity. It says it is celebrating humanity, and there is something implicit in the word festival that suggests that something will be commemorated and something will be promised. So it's always about the past and the future. So the very primal thing that all communities do in creating festivals is they want to honour a moment in time, even if they're repeating over and over again something which belongs to their ancestors. And the reason that I am drawn to putting on many festivals on our Festival of Britain site is because the word festival, culture is a word that's difficult to negotiate, and art even more so, although I would keep both and defend both. But if you say festival to anybody, they will have been to one. Whether it's the Harvest Festival or the Diwali or whatever it is, they will have been to a festival, and so they can imagine themselves there. The other thing about festivals, and the reason why at South Bank Centre it allows so many different kinds of voices, is what you were saying about 5 or 10 days. You have a critical mass of intensity which allows for many different ideas. And so you then realize as a human that you can't just belong to one tribe. You have to negotiate many, many tribes, tribes of thinking, tribes of experience, tribes of age, tribes of type. And this makes us innately more tolerant. Otherwise, we wouldn't go to a festival. We would just go to a salon where we can be with people just like ourselves. So there is something deeply demotic about the nature of a festival in its best form. And I think I'm intrigued by this recurrent, the way that festivals have become so popular the world over is because the experience of hearing both the orator in the room or the performer in the room, but also knowing that you'll probably bump into them in the cafe and that you can mix with people of all kinds is a replacement for the political dialogue which no longer exists in any sort of democratic way that we understand. Of course it's on television, of course it's on the radio, of course you can vote, but that is not the same as a really pluralistic exchange of ideas that helps you contemplate what your society could be.
So that's a pluralistic exchange of ideas, which is important. Before I ask the next question, I'm very honored that Nayantara Sehgal has walked into the room and she's just hiding in a corner. I would feel very appropriate that if she moved up. I would have liked to ask her to come on the stage, but if she can be in the front, it'll be a great kind of even greater honor. While she decides to move up, I want to ask Ameena. Ameena, you've been part of not one but 4 festivals. So don't these festivals add on to your workload? I mean, what makes you excited or eager or curious about these festivals? And what do they add into Pakistan, where we know that the culture of reading and attention to books is not on the increase?
Well, Asif, I think for me it's really a very rewarding and a very satisfying job to do, to organize these festivals. And I'm delighted and honored to have you as a co-founder. I think this is something that was badly needed in Pakistan. And that is, I think, just the turnout of people shows that there was a great need that has been filled. And I think my purpose was to celebrate our authors. I had been to a couple of other festivals. I had been to the Jaipur Literature Festival, and I used to be envious of the way that their authors were treated. They were chased by their readers who were asking them for autographs. And, they had a huge profile and status. And that is what I wanted to see our authors, because Pakistan has a very rich literary heritage, and there are so many people who are researching and writing. There's so much creativity over here. And what used to happen was really, I think the kind of publicity and promotion that they needed was not there. And if by some reason, if some author became popular, their books would be pirated. So again, they would get no compensation for their intellectual labor. So that was the idea, because I felt that authors have such an important role to play. And I think really I feel that my expectations, it has succeeded beyond my wildest dreams. And I think again it probably happened at the right time. And we got all our wonderful authors who took part, as well as international authors. And something has just worked. But what has really made me, feel thrilled is the audience. Not just the size of the audience, but the energy and the responsiveness that we get from them. Because this is all about expression. It's about celebrating what people have to say, and giving them a loud voice. And it's, of course, the authors and speakers are there, and they have platforms to speak from. But I find, and especially at the 6th Karachi Literature Festival, I find that it is the audience that is speaking. The questions that are coming through, they're very meaningful, very relevant, and many of our authors present here have told me that suddenly they have a sense that they have, what their readers are thinking about their books. So I think this year, the audience has spoken. So they have found expression, which has given me a lot of satisfaction.
Now, this is very interesting. It was supposed to be authors getting a voice, but you have been giving a voice to the readers, the people who don't speak. And at the center of each festival or a cultural program, there is the reader, who has to be given the right kind of books. So that brings us to your role, Karthika, as an editor, as a publisher. How do you ensure that there is enough material to feed on this hunger or this need, and how do you make sure the right kinds of books are being published?
I think as in terms of being a reader and someone who's watched festivals mushroom in India, obviously all the points that you made are equally relevant for India. But because everybody's been so positive and so happy about everything, let me try and tell you what might be the problems that we are coming up with also. Part of the difficulty is in India at this point, there are 60 plus festivals in a year. Now, to keep 60 plus festivals going with interest and energy and writers who are not the same writers being, taken from one to the other, there's a huge problem there. Funding is a problem. The smaller festivals have a great deal of difficulty getting writers to come. And who funds what is also a big problem. Where does the state step in? And when the state steps in to fund something, does the nature of the festival change? Do you actually have a free choice of writers and subjects and themes? So I think there's a lot that we're now engaging with in India, which is the second step, actually. The first step was celebrating. The first step was saying we have festivals and everything is so good, and we're giving writers a voice, and publishers are delighted, because what does a publisher want? They want room for their readers to be visible. They want room for the writers to be up on stage talking to their readers directly. And we want that visibility communicate to the media as well. Because the hardest thing is to get reviews, right, for your books. Hardest thing is to say to the media that books are relevant, that maybe you need to devote some inches of your precious newspaper space to talking about books. All of that at one stroke got into public space because the festivals became wonderfully visible, talked about, international. You had, rock stars of international writing coming to Jaipur, and everybody was, just swooning over them, signing up for events, all of that. The wonderful thing about these festivals, I think, is that they have become political in a way that we needed them to be. I think they started out as literature festivals. We had literary writers being on stage, but now increasingly you have sessions where people are talking about food, people are talking about other things that were never considered literary. And I think that's wonderful, that the contribution of these festivals has also been expanding the idea of literature, expanding the idea itself that we need to engage with, that it's not just the word on the literary page, but it's also about why do you eat the things you do, why do you sound the way do you do, why do you discuss something in this language rather than the other. And in a country like India, which is, multiple languages, communities, cultures, these have become the platform where controversy is courted rather than run away from, where you can go up and say the things that matter and know that you may not say this somewhere else, but YouTube will preserve it forever and people can listen to you say those things. And there will be good repercussions, not a sense of the fear that most people have in public speech. So it's a free space. It's a space that allows you to talk books, but also to talk about society and culture and politics. And that, I think, is the most valuable contribution of these festivals in our country for sure.
So I agree that it's a new space, but also a very important one. And I wonder how does that tie in with the relationship between the global and the local? And you talk about international rock stars moving in, but how about the relationship with the homegrown? Because I guess that's very important for India, Pakistan and Bangladesh, that what kind of relationship you maintain with the indigenous, the local language as compared with the international, without making any of the two compromise. Sadaf, I'll begin with you and I'll turn to Ameena after that. So you want to see, you want to talk about how you correlate the local as well as the international?
I think when we first started and called it an international literature festival, it was a very small festival, and people in Bangladesh had the idea that it was an English literature festival. We took it the second year to the Bangla Academy, which is the soul of Bangla literature in Bangladesh, and we have a very emotive relationship and political relationship with language, obviously, especially since our movements in 1952 and the fact that everything was Bangla medium since 1971. And I was perhaps naive, but I was also surprised and willing to face the challenge when we did have protests in our initial festival, because I think there was some kind of fear or some kind of apprehension that a literature festival which was mainly in English was going to be held at the Bangla Academy. Since then, we have tried to in our minds, what we were trying to do is express all types of literature in Bangladesh and celebrate all types, from our 1500-year-old or 2000-year-old oral and written literature, Bangla, English, Sanskrit, whatever, and all its different forms, as well as try and have a platform for not only English and a small nascent English writing community, but also which was written in Bangla. And also what Jude was mentioning was that this was a space for not a small, elite section of the society. This was supposed to be a space where we could really talk about things and have dialogue and reimagine the world. But the challenge has been, I think, and we were we're still in the honeymoon period, I think, because the audiences, you can tell the audiences now, the idea is to have world-class thinkers, so it will inspire somebody who is in a small state college, maybe has come out from Dhaka, has never perhaps even been to Dhaka or even never been abroad, can have world-class writers talk to them, perhaps hear something that will inspire them to change their course of life or reimagine something in a different way. And more our audiences are reflecting that. You can tell a very intense engagement with, and the level of the questions by young people who might not necessarily, you can tell they're probably Bangla medium. Their English might not be perfect, but they're still being able to articulate and interact both officially on this from question and answers in every session, but also informally as well. But our challenge has been, what Karthika was saying, I think is the second stage, is that this idea that, all our Bangla writers are now going to be translated and everybody is going to read them in the world, that is a big challenge. because there's a lot of promise that no, we're not just here for a small English population. We're here to try and get our wonderful Bangla literature out there. We're here to try and bring in global literature so that we can experience the range of literature. So these are all going to be challenges going forward. The challenges of having kind of rock star writers and also giving space to a lot of other important discussions that need to be done. But I think that it has been successful, that Karthika was also mentioning, that giving a space where there are increasingly shrinking spaces. And I think that that's a non-trivial success of the
so it's a kind
effort.
of a two-way process, that you're not only learning from the world, but giving back to the world. And Ameena, what this kind of intense engagement that Sadaf is talking about, you've already been through that. So have you been challenged by this necessity of trying to balance the global and the local, trying to make sure that people get the right kinds of books or a certain kinds of books? And have you been criticized for ignoring certain languages, certain sections, certain areas?
Yes, Asif, I think that has happened at every festival. I mean, we really do try our best, and sometimes I suppose we don't get the balance absolutely right, although we try our best to do that. We try to have a mix of local and international authors. But I think the criticism that I've always faced and you have faced is that there's not enough of Urdu or there's not enough of Sindhi. It's actually the local regional languages which people feel have not got the profile that they should. But this is something that I suppose it's work in progress. Every year we try to improve the balance. But on the whole, I think it has been working out. Generally, I think people have enjoyed it, and I think they have actually voted with their feet at all our festivals. And I think for me, what is very important is that it is not just, of course, we love to have very well-known best-selling authors, and we do get them. But we also try to have our young emerging writers, because I feel that they must get this opportunity, which is why we publish a book every year, a book we have a kind of a competition, and we publish anthologies of emerging Pakistani writers. This year we've published it in Urdu. And of course, and then we launch it, so all the young writers come in, they get a chance to speak about their writings. So there is this balance between best-selling and emerging writers and local and foreign writers. But very quickly I want to say that also our effort is to make it democratic, in the sense that we want people from all walks of life and all ages to be here. And I think to some extent, again, I feel that has worked out. We have sessions for children so that people with young children can also come, and their children will be entertained while they are attending sessions. And I think it is really promoting the cause of democracy because of the debates that are taking place. And I find that some of them are really quite, people are challenging each other. And the audience is challenging speakers. And as you said, Karthika, that this was a forum and this was a platform where people can speak openly and yet feel secure about what they are saying. And, whatever they say, and the press is very happy when they say something different or new, or they are, then that is carried in the media.
So this kind of freedom for people to give voice to things which are not generally said, again, that's very specific to our own situation in South Asia to a varying degree. And I wonder if Ulrich has a sense that is there something that can be learned from the kind of festivals or the programs that you have been involved in, and the kind of challenges for creating openness and dialogue, which is so relevant to South Asia. Is that something which you feel is an important need for you?
Something what I can recommend for your festivals.
That's right.
Here, yeah, sure. I mean, I think the internationality for a literary festival is very important, and so we try in Berlin to invite generally authors from every continent, and I think it's perhaps good to, and also since some embassies and some cultural institutions, also like the Instituto Cervantes, not only the French Culture Institute and the Goethe Institute, they give a support for this for the attendance of authors in other countries. So also the Arab world. And second, the children's program and the program for young adults. As I spoke some minutes ago, we try from the beginning to realize a strong program for children and for schools and young adults, and this is perhaps also important. So, and yeah, what else? I don't know. I mean, I have a deeply respect that you realize here in this town, and also I was last year in Lahore. These festivals, and I think they're very good organized, and the program is very good. Yeah, I have a little bit of a problem to say. Perhaps it can be more international, and more. You can do more for children and young adults, but especially in Berlin, it's very important. I think for the political support of our festival. I don't know what you're doing there in the South Bank Center concerning that. That is interesting for me, and I'm sure that authors from Germany or from France or from Spain or other countries that they can come to Pakistan, to Karachi and Lahore and Islamabad, and that they can read from their works in English. I mean, they're not translated into Urdu, or but yeah.
So we are talking of our programs not only in the sense that they're well organized or they have important or good or useful content, but we are talking of something which is very essential, which is democratic, which is important and vital for society to function. And I wonder if, Jude, if you have the sense of same kind of urgency, the same kind of necessity of these programs, which I hear Ameena and Sadaf talking about, or is it somewhat different?
I think it is. It seems different, but I think, just being in this room, it's exactly the same. I just want to remind everybody in this audience that in Britain's history, after Shakespeare and the Jacobean playwrights, all the theatres were closed down for years by the Puritans. And I never believe one can say that history will never repeat. So the need to keep saying over and over again that free speech, ideas, cultural exchange, the world being one place, this is something we all take responsibility for. We are not separated. Pakistan and the UK are united in the sense that a deficit of free speech in one country will endanger another country. It is absolutely the case. And so you talked about voice in the sense of English and Urdu being tension about programming. Now, you could say that in the UK we haven't got that explicit problem because we have English as our first language, although we have many other languages spoken as communities' first languages. But we do have a problem of class, and we do have a problem, therefore, of who is entitled to a platform and who isn't. And therefore, this issue of giving voice space becomes something about democracy. And there's definitely in the UK a dangerous deficit of political belief in the party system. And into that deficit come other loud voices, some of which are quite dangerous. And those loud voices need to be replaced by other voices. And not necessarily the intellectual voice, always, but the spread of voices of different class, different backgrounds and different life experiences. I think one of the reasons why people love to hear authors talk is because they can go beyond the word in the book to the sort of testimony of the writer, to the meaning of the writing to them. And this is different from analysing the book. It's a sort of relationship with a human saying why they were compelled to write and the techniques they used. So in a sense, it's human testimony to the writer's life. I don't mean, how many times they got married and all this sort of business. I'm talking about, the sort of inner beating heart of this human. And I think what's become interesting about festivals is how much you can get different kinds of people giving testimony to their life. And I believe this is a new kind of understanding that I suppose the internet has led us in that direction to a certain extent, but it's the ability to value many voices. And it's urgent in the UK. It's urgent in the UK because we have just as much possibility of shifting to the right as any other country has.
Thank you. I know, Karthika, you want to respond, but I want to put you in a tight corner first. We have been talking about festivals in a very positive, almost as if there were kind of no problems attached with this. And sometimes with the sway of market and commercial forces, you can have a certain kind of book being promoted or a certain kind of book being published and oozing out from all festivals till you have to read this book, you have to buy this book. And is that a real danger? Yeah.
Moderator. I was just going to actually come into that same point from what she said. One is that one of the most disappointing things about festivals is also listening and meeting a writer you should never have met or heard. They were so good to read, and then you see them and you say, no, the humanity is lost, the reading is lost. So just a word of caution on that one. But
that reminds me of a beautiful line by Munir Niazi, who's an Urdu and Punjabi poet. And in English it would be something like, there are some people you should meet only in dreams.
Yes. Absolutely. But yeah, this is a big problem. And I mean, if I may take that from a slightly different point of view, as an editor, as a publisher, one of the things that actually worries me about literary festivals is when I go to the big festivals and I listen to writers on the stage. So suppose I publish a really charismatic writer who speaks beautifully, who performs beautifully on stage. My instinctive reaction is, oh, the next time I publish him, I know that there's a market. I know there are readers. I know this is where I can sell some books, etc., etc. And at the same time, somebody who's a brilliant writer, who has great things to say, but who cannot perform. Now, instinctively, everyone's worrying about that writer now, because they're saying without the platform of those festivals, how are we going to market this person, you know? And now this is really reversing. You're looking at the text and saying that's not as relevant as the personality or the sort of ability to throw your voice or whatever it is. So that's really worrying for an editor. And I do think that there are areas in which, I mean, festivals can lead to the wrong sort of conversation, and perhaps the writer who should be out there is not as much out there as the really popular mass market writer who goes out there and says the things that people want to hear.
But don't you think there's a different way of curating festivals?
Yes, absolutely.
Now?
So I think the festival has a responsibility to see that they do the right thing by the writers and by the readers, and not just get swayed by, as you said, the market of it. But the last point in this context is also, you know, about this whole thing about coming together. For me as an editor and a publisher, the biggest thing that's coming to Karachi has done is I'm actually able to spend time with some of the writers I publish who live in Karachi and Pakistan. There's just no way to come here otherwise, unless, Ameena, you say, I'm inviting you to this festival. So I come here and I can see you, Irshad Saab, I can see HM. I can spend an afternoon with them in a way that I could never do. And that's something that's vital to editors and writers, to be able to work together. So I think a festival, wherever it is, as long as it's sort of, especially for the subcontinent, I think it's also to do with us being able to share and communicate with each other in a way that we just can't do sitting in our own little terrains.
So the secret benefit of all such festivals is that they break down those invisible barriers which make reaching out to books difficult. So we are crossing all the borders that we have built around ourselves. You ended up on the note of responsibility of festivals and how important, how relevant it is. I just don't want to conclude on that, but I want to open the floor for some questions and comments because we are short of time. So I'll request each person to keep the comment to be brief. Mehmood sir.
And it's a good offer, basically, and I wish you the best.
Thank you. That's a point well taken. And do I see? Yes. So can somebody please pass on the mic? Go ahead. Maybe you can be loud enough for us to hear.
My name is Asif. And while listening to you, an idea came to my mind which I think I should share about Pakistan and the location of Pakistan. We talk about in political sense, but here the idea is of strategic linguistic location of Pakistan, because with the location of Pakistan we can connect with South Asia also linguistically, India, Bangladesh, and we can also connect with Afghanistan and Iran by the medium of Persian. So my question or idea was about collaborating with Iran and Afghanistan on the left side and Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka on the right side. Thank you.
Not only left and right, but the world at large. And so Berlin doesn't happen to be next door, or neither does London, but I think the relevance is there.
Yeah.
Do I see, Jude, you want to comment on that?
I think we cannot underestimate how important this region has become to the world. And the world has got to attend to the listening to the region. So actually, what's happening in Karachi Literature Festival, Lahore Literature Festival, Jaipur Literature Festival in Afghanistan, this is something where you are the experts and the expertise needs to be heard. So I think I agree with you that actually one shouldn't understand how pivotal this could be.
Ulrich, you have a comment on that? After all, you are the world.
No. But I mean, perhaps I don't got the question so exactly. But you spoke on the cooperation between initiatives in Afghanistan and other countries, and with the festivals here. Yeah, I think this makes of course sense. But yeah, I don't know. I can only say this will make sense, but. Yeah, I don't know what to say.
Difficult to say. Irshad sir?
Well, I was just going to say that this seems to be becoming a new international medium. These festivals are becoming a new international medium where people are meeting and talking and doing the things that all of you have been talking about in a sense, and it's another means of people coming together. It's a new voice or a new medium in a sense of people that is happening more and more and more. I anticipate that we'll have festivals with different countries, Southeast Asian countries, Central Asian countries, African countries, and so on and so forth. It will become like an international mode of communication. That's what I see.
Yeah,
Perhaps
Ulrich,
one sentence only. We create some years ago, 3 years ago, the so-called World Alliance. This is a cooperation of I think now 9 festivals: New York, Jaipur, Melbourne, and Saint-Malo, Berlin, and Edinburgh is the in. And I mean, we thought we will have in the future, in 2 or 3 years, a big sponsor to sponsor our 9 festivals. In terms of that, the cooperation didn't work, but there is a strong exchange between ideas, about ideas, and also we speak, of course, about authors which we can invite or should invite, and cooperation between initiatives here in Pakistan and with Afghanistan and Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and so on. I think this makes a lot of sense. I think. Yes.
thank you, Ulrich.
One more thing. The other thing is that these kind of festivals, they encourage, as you put it earlier, what Ameena mentioned, ordinary people of the cities and the areas to participate. There is no special invitation. There are no special delegates. There are not specially appointed people. Everybody comes and everybody can join in. And so there is a kind of concourse of ideas and people and so on and so forth. It just doesn't happen in any other kind of international mix that I can think of, perhaps at the Olympics and things like that. But other than that, I do not see it at this level.
Thank you, Irshad. That's a very strong, positive vibe coming from the audience. I was hoping there will be some uncomfortable suggestions or questions from the audience, which would make us, be more defensive. Right at the end.
Thank you so much, Ameena. I would like to say thanks for bringing the Literature Festival to Karachi. This is my only second exposure to this, but it's brilliant. And I think the kind of exposure you get to different ideas, discourse, and debate is unmatched, at least in this city. And having said that, is there some way for the audience and for us to give you perhaps suggestions and feedback on the event? And if so, is there a regular forum or some way we can get in touch with you, if you could shed light on that?
Actually, you can post your comments on our website, the KarachiLiteratureFestival.org.
Yeah, gentleman in the first row.
Yeah. Well, it won't be uncomfortable what I'm saying, but I think that there are big differences in the nature of the festivals by default, whether they are taking place here in the subcontinent or, for instance, in Berlin. I mean, if you just look at the size of your countries, India and Pakistan, and the size of ours in Germany, the population of Delhi, or the population of Germany is about 3.5 times the population of Delhi, or 4 times the population of Karachi. So the nature of discourse and exchange that's happening in Berlin and in many other cities where you have different festivals and where you have all kinds of literary events all through the year has to be different than at an occasion like this, which is enormously important for the discourse in the society. And if you take another genre of art, for instance, the Kochi Biennale, the only Biennale or the only relevant Biennale so far in South Asia, of course, this is completely different and much more relevant for the local community than, for instance, the Biennale in Venice. So, by default, it has to be different. But one question I would like to ask, particularly to Karthika, what's the role of private entrepreneurs in sponsoring festivals? There has been some discussion on that, about the Jaipur Literature Festival, also about other literature festivals. Do you see a little bit of danger or something of a problem in that?
Well, I see a problem in both. I see a problem in private, companies that have dubious ethics, maybe, dealing with literary festivals and sponsoring them, but I also have a problem with the state being too involved in festivals. I think on either side there's a difficulty. On the other hand, you need money to run festivals. Where is that going to come from? I mean, the most ethical companies are perhaps not interested in promoting themselves in that aggressive a fashion as to put their brand up there. So it is going to be difficult to negotiate, and I think one comes back to the festival being very clear about what they're setting out to do. If their agenda is to promote ideas and free speech and creative writing, then I think they will have to take a stand and say, these kinds of companies we will agree to be sponsored by, and the state can come in a little bit because obviously they own the space in which you are, and possibly a lot of other infrastructure comes from them. But I'm afraid it's not so important for the Prime Minister or the Chief Minister to come in and make speeches or do the kinds of things that then say this is a state festival and therefore we can only say the kinds of things that the state would agree to. But you can't do without the state police, you can't do without the state infrastructure. So it's a balancing act, and I think so far, I know from my experience in India that most of the festivals are trying really hard to walk that, tightrope very carefully, because they also know that possibly the most sensitive to this area is writers themselves, and writers will refuse to come to a festival where they feel that ethics are a problem, and therefore they need to work with this question very carefully. We'll have to wait and watch how far they succeed, but I'm very hopeful.
I think the balancing act is, there's just the last question because I have to close the, sorry Babar, he had his hand first.
Assalamu alaikum. My question is to Asif Saab and Ameena Sayyid. I believe that literature festivals are very necessary, not only in relation to countries, but within the country. Since I am from Balochistan, I would be really happy to know if there is any plan in your literature festivals to bring it to Balochistan, or in areas which are very difficult for people to come here and attend those festivals. Thank you.
Because it's a tough question, I'll turn it to Ameena so that she can.
Well, actually, we also organize a children's literature festival, and we had one in Quetta in 2012, which was very successful. What I want to say about your question to have it in Quetta, I would say that why don't you get a team of people in Quetta to organize it? And this is actually one of the motives to make this into a movement throughout Pakistan and get other people to organize their festivals. I mean, I was delighted when the Lahore Literature Festival was held, again by local people from Lahore. Then there's one in Faisalabad, one was held in Gwadar. So actually, you know, there should really be an outbreak of festivals all over the country, but you need to own it yourself. Get some people, local people, to have it.
So the outbreak is important. Jude, you had last comment?
Well, I started a festival 5 years ago called Women of the World, about everything to do with women and girls' emancipation. And it's now in 10 countries and it's spreading around the world. And we do it by working with women in the Aboriginal communities in Australia as well as Harlem. And really, the point is, when you have enthusiasm in a place like you're enthusiastic, you have to hand on the mantle, just as you said, you know, the baton's got to go to you, you've got to go and start it, because you'll only get cultural spread by people staying in their own place and making things happen.
Babar, very brief last comment, 30 seconds. Yeah.
On the corporate sponsorship, Arundhati Rai has written very strongly against it. So, what do you think?
Well, exactly what I said. I have problems with corporates sort of stepping in and taking over a literary and creative space as well. But as I said, where do you get money from? I mean, individuals are not putting in money into this, but they might walk around with a hat, but there isn't going to be enough money. So one way to do it is take the money from wherever it comes, whoever gives it to you, and to hell with it. Sit up on stage and curse them. Say the wrong things you want to say, yell at them, shout at them. It doesn't matter. They want you, you need them, they need you, and that maybe levels it out as well in a little sort of way.
Take the money, but don't run. Ameena, you have the final.
2 seconds. I just want to say that for us, another important objective is actually to reclaim the space that is being taken away from us for cultural activities and literary, intellectual activities. Our space is shrinking, and we have to use these festivals to reclaim it.
So I hope there'll be plenty more questions, and you have till next year, February, where you can start keep on shooting questions at all of us. But now I would like to close the session and begin by thanking my panelists, Ameena, Jude, Sadaf, Karthika, and Ulrich. Thank you very much.